Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to go over the changes that we're going to get from PTB to live for the patch on Tuesday with Alan Wake. And I quickly skimmed this, and a lot of it seemed honestly not good. I feel like a lot of these were huge misses, so this is not a very positive patch review here, but let's go over exactly what they did. Maybe I misunderstood something, which I tend to do sometimes. So first off, we're going to start with Sadako. She is, in my opinion, she was decent on the PTB. I was really trying to find my footing on how to play with her, and right towards the end of me playing on the PTB, I was really starting to get it, and I was starting to be good players, and that was really good. But I never really felt she was like too strong or anything like that. If anything, I felt she might have been a little too weak because her chase power is still pretty bad. Survivors that didn't know what they were doing were getting condemned pretty frequently, but as soon as I started going against even decent players, I didn't see a single condemn because they were just staying on top of it the entire time. So I didn't feel like she was strong or anything, but apparently the devs figured she was way too strong. So the changes that they made. The first is for locked in condemn. This change, in my opinion, makes absolutely zero sense, especially considering their reasoning. So on the PTB, if you hooked a survivor, any condemn that they had, it would be permanently locked in. So if you hooked them with 4 stacks of condemn, they would never be able to go below 4 stacks of condemn, which means you only needed 3 more. And that made it so you really had to respect the condemn mechanic. If you were getting condemned, you needed to take tapes and you needed to put them in TVs to get those stacks away, because if you got hooked, it's going to be way harder to avoid condemn when you're that close already. And that actually gave her not lethality, but built-in slowdown. It made it so you couldn't, as a survivor, just, mess around with 4 or 5 stacks and just, whatever happens. If she chases me, all right, whatever, I'll just take a tape in and do it later. No, like once you get to like 2 or 3, you needed to go and cleanse that pretty quickly. So it didn't really increase the lethality. It just made it so people did gen slower because they had to take the tapes across the map more because they were respecting the new mechanic. And I thought that was good. I thought that design was actually awesome, because if a killer has not great chase potential, you need to give them built-in slowdown, kind of like Pig, for example. And I think that was really good design. But now they're locking the maximum amount of condemn to 2 stacks per hook, which means when you're on death hook, you could have potentially 4 stacks, but who cares, because then you're on death hook, and whether you're killed on the ground or you're killed on the hook, you're still dying, so it's sort of irrelevant. The problem is the mindset that they have makes no sense here. They said it would take only a few more stacks of condemn to secure a quick and early kill. This indirectly encouraged the killer to seek out and chase the same survivor after they were unhooked, or tunneling for short. Which, sure, it did. That is very true. But then they say here, any additional condemn will remain but can be removed by the survivor as normal. Makes no sense. If they're getting tunneled off the hook to get condemned to death, whether or not it's permanent or not makes no difference. They're still going to get condemned. It's not like they're going to get chased off the hook, run to a TV station, grab a tape, run back, then put a tape in. If they already had a tape, it's not like they're going to be able to make it across the map to the tape and put it in before the killer is able to down them too. I guess that's what they're thinking, that they'll, in that 10-second window of borrowed time, they're going to be able to get to their TV and put the tape in, maybe. But I don't see how that's going to happen. So to me, this logic makes no sense. If a killer is already tunneling, whether the stacks are permanent or not, there's no difference. They're still going to tunnel them. And that's just, that's just how the game works, unfortunately. There are killers way better at tunneling than Sadako. Just because she is following you to try to kill you doesn't mean she can actually kill you. She still has no real chase power, so it's still not that threatening, to be honest. But the logic here is what annoys me so much. It makes no sense. If anything, the permanent change would help with people that are not tunneling. It will help with people that are just hooking people and then going to chase someone else. Now, because that first guy was greedy, his second chase is going to be a bit scarier because he's much closer to condemn now. When you keep spreading pressure, you get more and more slowdown from this. And I think that's actually really good design. And in fact, it incentivized not tunneling. That's the thing. It blows my mind. So if someone wants to tunnel off the hook, whether or not it's permanent doesn't matter. They're still going to do it. And they would have to remove this change here. In fact, if you were unhooked, it should remove all of your condemn, according to their logic, which I think would be a terrible change. But I'm just saying, none of this makes sense. They need to uncap the amount of stacks of condemn that you keep when you are hooked. This actually benefits people that do not tunnel, not people that do tunnel. People that do tunnel have the same effect, so it's just neutral. But for people that don't tunnel, it gives them more slowdown later. So this is stupid. This is very dumb. Revert that. There's zero reason or logic to do that change. Yeah, that's bad. One of the awkward playstyles we wanted to address with this update was the dominant strategy of teleporting as much as possible to quickly spread Condemned. I don't understand, because that is the way you spread Condemned. That's like one of the awkward playstyles was playing the killer correctly. We don't want that, so that's weird. So what they're doing in a nutshell, they're making it so there's no cooldown in teleporting, but you have an internal timer of 10 seconds before you are able to apply Condemn again. I don't really see this as that big of a deal. Typically, the TVs are like 10 seconds away from each other anyway, so I mean, I don't really consider this to be that big of a nerf. This is sort of whatever. It just seems like they're just trying to pretend they're doing something meaningful here, but I don't really think this does much of anything. So it's changes, whatever. Typically, they're going to be within the range of a new TV within 10 seconds anyway. There are going to be some times when, yeah, there's a cluster of two TVs and you might have been able to get 2 stacks and you will feel that nerf there. But for the most part, I don't think that's very impactful. But yeah, pretty unnecessary nerfs for a killer that wasn't strong to begin with. She was strong the first couple of games while people were figuring out what to do, but then after that, I felt pretty weak using her until I started changing on my playstyle and started winning more. So yeah, bad changes overall. Pretty much all bad. Blight. So Blight somehow is buffed from the PTB in certain regards, at least in certain regards. So Compound 33, this is the one that increased his turn rate by 33%. It was comical. You could essentially just run loops like survivors. So they nerfed that by a lot. So it's now 11% instead of 33%, which means when you get basically 3 stacks of it, you will have what 1 stack of it used to be, which I think is far more aligned with being fair. They also reduced the required rush distance to 3 meters instead of 4, but that's sort of whatever. But this is good. This add-on was comically strong. It was basically like old Blight tier of stupidly strong. So this is a lot more in line with what an add-on should be. So 33% max turning for all the stacks. I think that's fair. We'll see how Master Blights use that. I'm not quite sure if it'll still be too strong, but it's definitely way more fair than it used to be. Iridescent Blight Tag, which admittedly was insanely fun, but pretty busted, allowed you to rush infinite times. When you hit someone, then you would go on cooldown for 20 seconds. So basically, it made this whole thing where it was like Chucky, where you're basically guaranteed a hit, but then you're useless for the next 20 seconds, and that's not really great game design. But the main problem with it was you could swing and miss or hit a pallet or just fuck up in any way or just end your rush, and you would still not have the cooldown, which means the only way you ever went on cooldown is if you hit somebody, which basically means you were guaranteed to hit somebody in a certain amount of time, and that's guaranteed hits are never really good in the game, in my opinion. So what they did was change it so that if you hit a pallet or you miss an attack or you just don't bump into anything, then you lose your power for 20 seconds. That is far more in line with what we thought it would be like. I think that's far more fair. Now you can actually dodge a Blight's hit and they have no power for 20 seconds. That's way more fair. Unfortunately, in the hands of good Blights, this is probably still going to be insanely strong, but at least average shitters can't just toss it on and just get guaranteed hits on you now. And let's be real, against the really good Blights, you're dying anyway, so what's the difference? I think this is a much better change. Adrenaline Vial was buffed from the PTB. They just removed the turn rate penalty entirely, so now you just get 2 additional charges and also 5% faster rush speed with no downside anymore, so yay. Hillbilly got a couple of good changes in my opinion. So these add-ons that were supposed to reduce the recovery timer for successful chainsaw, they didn't make any sense. Strangely enough, that's not how they work. They actually reduce the cooldown of a miss and a hit. So even the description in the PTB was incorrect, and this line is strange because it did do the thing that it's talking about here. But basically, they've reduced it from 10 and 15% to 8 and 12%, but now it applies to any use of the chainsaw, the cooldown. So that's a hit or a miss. I don't know why they're acting like this is not how it worked in the PTB, because it already reduced the time after recovery using a chainsaw, not just successful hits. Even on a miss, it still improved your cooldown. I don't know why they're pretending that that wasn't the case. Basically, they just took that combination and nerfed it by a little bit, which, to be fair, it was actually insanely strong. One of the very few strong things about the old Hillbilly was Instasaw and the cooldown reduction. Carburetor Tuning Guide and Thompson's Mix made it so even when you missed a chainsaw, you barely lost any distance, and that was really rough. And we were kind of having that exact thing again in the PTB. I originally thought it was a bug because the description said it was after a chainsaw hit, but it was working on misses. So I could fuck up a chainsaw and the survivor would still be right here, and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's good. So actually, strangely enough, nerfing that a little bit from 25% to 20% is good. This is still going to be one of the strongest add-on combinations that he has, especially when you're learning Hillbilly. being able to just recover that much faster is extremely useful, and was one of the strongest things about the old Hillbilly. So that is, strangely enough, about Hillbilly, I think pretty justified. It's pretty minor. It's 2% and 3% per add-on. It's very minor. So those add-ons are still going to be very, very strong. They changed some of the heat add-ons related as well. So the rate at which speed dissipates has now been, the add-on was buffed to 20 and 30% from 10 and 50%, so it slows that down. And then they also changed the rate before it starts dissipating. So it's like there's a delay before the dissipate starts, and then there's a rate of dissipation. Basically, they just made these add-ons better, so you can hold on to your overheat longer, so you can use the overdrive ability longer. Remember, this is not overheat anymore. It's not a negative effect. You want to hold this. So it's going to be a slower drain of that, when normally you would want a faster drain. With the old ability, you want this to drain slower now, so you can use that overdrive more often and when you want it to be, when it's more prescient. I just wanted to use that word. I don't know why. Anyway, perks, save the best for last. I still think this initial change is a fat L. They correctly identified that people would use things like plot twist to just remove stacks across the map, so they removed that ability. You now need to still hit the obsession, but it still doesn't change the fact this is going to make killers tunnel drastically higher when they're running the perk, because they are not going to want to lose any stacks. And if the obsession is just not immediately there, or even if they are immediately there, if they're unable to physically block a hallway that the killer needs to pass, the killer is just going to ignore them and tunnel the person off the hook because they don't want to lose any stacks, and rightfully so. It would make sense they don't want to. So I think this is a bad change overall. All they had to do was slightly nerf the percent or make it not work around hooks, so you couldn't just camp hooks with 8 stacks and get free downs like that, which was stupid. The way they took Save the Best for Last here is very dumb in my opinion. This just makes tunneling even worse. And it doesn't really address the issue of it still being really strong. Additionally, they expect solo queue players to just be able to communicate this, because there's still no way to know if the killer has it. So it's just a lot of just bad design. This overall thing is just really bad in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of that. So, other than that, they have introduced something called a watch list, which is basically known issues. I guess they've just renamed it. It's things that they know that could be a problem, but to them aren't a problem yet. So it's basically just letting us know that they are aware of the current issues. The first is Grim Embrace plus Deadman Switch, which is way too strong. There is no debating this. They don't have to sit there and wait to see how it's going to do. It's too strong. Just do the basic math. This combo gives you 30 seconds blocked every time you hook somebody on every generator in the map. That's just too much. That's just too much. That means you get that 4 times, and on the 4th one, it does it for even longer because Grim Embrace's actually effect works. It's just too much slowdown. It's better than every slowdown perk in the game, this combination, and you can still use it with other slowdowns. You can still run Pop and Pain Res with this for when it finally does expire. So it is, it's too much. They need to look into that. It's just way too strong. Just make it not stack with each other. That's it. That's all they have to do. Just make those 2 perks not stack. Make it so the 12 second of Grim Embrace is the only one. Even then, 12 seconds per first hook. That's 48 seconds of generator blockage across the map. 12, 24, 30. Okay, I can do math. So that is insane. And the fact that you can stack this with Deadman Switch to give it 30, 30, 30, 30, like, that's just, it's too much. It's way too much. They don't need to test this. It's just too strong. The end. I don't know why they're pretending like they're not going to nerf this in a couple of weeks, but whatever. The generator changes, they basically commented here that it's just really meant to affect very long, drawn-out 3-gen matches. It shouldn't really affect anything else, which is true. It didn't really affect anything else. My games in the PTB felt exactly the same because I don't like dragging matches out for an hour. I never encountered the maximum amount of regression events or anything like that. So if you guys are playing as normal, you're just doing normal games, you're not going to notice this system whatsoever. It's just for the shitters that were playing Skull Merchant and dragging it out for 50 minutes. You're going to notice it, but frankly, too bad that you deserve that. So that's fine. They said they feel pretty confident in Sadako's strength right now, but they'll be carefully assessing it. I'm not confident in her strength at all, but we'll see how it goes on live. And finally, they're talking about Hillbilly saying that he has a big learning curve, and they're not sure whether or not once people get over that curve, whether Billy will be too strong. I don't think so. I think Hillbilly is actually like a decent killer for the first time in seemingly 6 years now. So this is going to be, in my opinion, good. I don't think he needs any further changes other than what we have right now, but I guess we'll see. Overall, a lot more misses than hits from these changes. I think the PTB itself was honestly way better. A couple of Blight add-ons needed to be toned down, but a lot of these changes are not very good. So I'm still looking forward to playing Hillbilly. That's by far the thing I'm most excited about for the patch, but a lot of these other changes were frankly just not good. That's it. Thanks for watching.